Hi, George here, and this video is all about layers here in Photoshop Elements. Now, I'm currently in Elements 2024, but if you're using an earlier version, it works exactly the same way. No difference at all, just the interface looks a bit different, but aside from that, everything's exactly the same. Now, I'll be covering a lot of stuff here. It's kind of a general discussion of layers, but this will give you all the basics on how to use layers. Now, layers are the most important thing here inside of Elements. Every project I do involves using layers. Now, if you want more information and more in-depth information on layers, you of course can watch more of my videos here on YouTube, but also take a look at my new HTGPhoto coach for Photoshop Elements, and that gives you text-based instructions for everything about layers, which you can then print out and have right next to you as you're working on your projects. I'll put a link for that in the description, and I'll talk more about that in just a little bit. Okay, I recently received a comment saying that my previous video about layers didn't start at the very beginning with just a blank layer. So we'll go ahead, we'll do that right now. I'll close this thing down. There we go. So when you open up Photoshop Elements, you're either going to be opening up a new image or just a new blank file. Let's do both of those. File new and blank file. I'll put this at the default size, choose open, and I'll go ahead and I'll just dock that. There we go, a blank file. And notice over here, right-hand side, it says backgrounds. This comes in with just one layer, and it's the background layer. If you're not on the Layers panel, either click on that at the bottom corner down here, or go up to Window and come down here, or hit the F11 key. All of those will bring you to the Layer panel on the right-hand side. Let's close this, and it'll open up an image in here. File Open, and I'll just open up a previous project image. There we go. Choose Open, and we'll dock that. There we are. And notice it's the exact same thing. The image comes in as a background layer over here, right-hand side. Now, if all you're doing is just adjusting the settings in here, maybe using the Enhance menu up here, you might not need to have any more layers, but even so, I prefer to make one more layer at the very least, and that gives you a protection. So over here, where it says background, right-click where it says background, and then duplicate the layer, choose OK, and then hide that background. You can now work on this background copy without damaging your original. If this gets messed up, just go back to your original and make another copy. So it's a real nice, very safe way to work here inside of Photoshop Elements. So that's one way to add a new layer. Right-click and duplicate. You can also add in new blank layers by clicking on this button right here. This is the New Layer button. Or going up here to the Layer menu and coming down to New. Right there, we can duplicate here as well. And you can make a new layer or a layer from background. What this is it just takes the background here and renames it so it's no longer a background layer. And the reason why you would do that is that the background layer is locked partially, and that's this little icon over here. That shows that the transparent areas on the background are locked. We don't have any in here. Normally you don't have any, but it's a little bit protected. The other way to do that is to right-click and layer from background here. Let me just show you what that does real fast. Here we go, layer from background. It just renames it layer 0 instead of background layer. That's something which I almost never do because I always work on copies of the background instead. If you want to bring in another photograph or some artwork or something else into this same file here as a new layer, a couple ways of doing that. If you had that open down here in the photo bin, which is right here, there you go. You just bring it in that way. Let me show you that. I'll just open up a new file here, File and Open, and I'll grab something with clouds. There we are. I'll grab that one, choose Open. I'll just dock that. There we go. So here's our clouds image. Here's this image. So if you're on this image and you want to bring in that cloud image, just drag it from the photo bin over here, and it comes in as a new layer, just like that. Okay, let's just delete that one. There we go. Another way, and this one requires that you have floating windows activated. So to get floating windows, go up to the Edit menu, come down here to Preferences and General. And it's that checkbox right there on the General tab, Allow Floating Documents. So that's normally unchecked. Go ahead, check that one, choose OK. And now all you need to do is to float this in front, grab that background layer, drag it over here. Same thing, comes in as a new layer. One more way to bring in a new layer here is the Place command, and that's up here under the File menu. Coming down to Place. Same thing, find your image. There you go, and Place. Comes in as a placed image. Now this is a Smart Object layer, so it has some protections on it. I'll just go ahead and check mark that. There we go. It's a little icon right down here. That means that this layer, when you place it, is protected. If I try to change the pixels on this layer, let's say I wanted to paint on this, I'll grab my paintbrush, come in here. As I can't do anything, it tells me that I can't do it. Now it will ask if you want to go ahead and proceed. If If you choose OK, this is going to simplify this layer and it's no longer one of these special layers. Or go up here where it says Sky 49520. This is the name. If you right click on the name, it brings up a little pop-up menu right here. And one of the options is Simplify Layer. Same thing. It just converts that layer into a regular image layer. It's no longer a protected layer, and I can then paint right on that layer. I'll just do Control-Z keyboard shortcut to undo that step. I'll do it once again. So I'm back to that protected smart object layer right here. Sometimes you want to have things as smart object layers. And again, even here, if I was going to be working on this layer, changing it, I'd probably make a copy of this or duplicate, right-click on the name, duplicate layer, choose OK, hide the original, then I'll simplify this layer and then work on the copy so I can always get back to that clean layer if I need to in the future. Notice at this point, I now have a bunch of layers on here. And if I click on one of these layers, I'm going to change here to the Move tool like that. We're on a layer. And notice out here, there's these little boxes on the corners and the sides. This whole thing is the bounding box. And you can see that down here in the tool options, it says Show Bounding Box. And those handles are control handles, and those allow you to change the contents of that one layer. Just grab a handle. If you grab from the corner, it pulls in the same ratio. If you grab from the side or the top or bottom, you can change the ratio like this. You can kind of squish or squeeze it as you want. I'll just cancel that and back to normal. So those are your control handles out here. And I use those a lot again in my training if I want to just resize something quickly. There we go. This is one area where having your layer as a protected smart object layer is useful because I can change the size without damaging the pixels, and it's still a protected layer. Okay, let's just hide these. Okay, let's say I wanted to change my order in here. You can actually take a layer like this and move it to a different location. Just grab it and just drag it like that, and it changes its order over here. If I drag it up on top, it's now in front of this layer here. I can take this one and drag it up, and it's now in front of that layer. This is just changing the order in here. The easy way is just by dragging and dropping. Or if you go up to the layer menu, come down here to Arrange, same thing. You can send backward, send to the back, move forward if it's not the top one. I'll just do send backward. There it goes. Same thing as just dragging that layer. Now I mentioned previously that I have a new tool that really helps you learn how to use Photoshop Elements, and this works with any version of Photoshop Elements. Let me show you what that is real fast here. I'll bring that up. There we go. This actually is my new HTGPhoto membership site, and as part of this site, I have the PSE Coach right here. Long name is the PSE Photo Coach for Adobe Photoshop Elements. Let me just maximize this window, and what this is a tool which gives you instructions, text-based instructions for everything inside of Photoshop Elements. I'm constantly updating this, adding more information into it, so it gets better every single week. Two ways of using this. One is over here, click on this arrow, and you can then search for different areas. Right now we're looking at panels. Here's our panels. Click on that. Here's add layer styles into layers. We'll be talking about that in just a little bit. So you can look down through here and see everything about all the different panels. Or more easily, just click into the search area here and do a search. I'll just do a search here for layers. And this shows all the articles I have about layers. Notice I have 127 different articles that talk about layers. We'll go on this one here, how to use layers. Click on that, and here you go. Lots of information about how to use layers right inside here. So it's that easy to use. And again, this is designed to work with any version of Photoshop Elements, and it's constantly being updated. If you want to find out more about this, I'll put a link for this in the description. Okay, let's get back to our layers again. Let's look at a few different options for the layers panel itself. The first one, if you roll right over the edge right here, it's kind of hard to see, but right here turns into a double arrow. If you click and drag that, you can make this a bit skinnier or you can make it wider. You have that kind of size adjustment in here. Sometimes if you have a real long name on your layer, it's nice to pull this out so you can see the whole name. That's as far as it goes out, and that's as far as it goes in. So there's a little bit of adjustment in here. We have our buttons down below here. If you click on this arrow right there and change it to custom workspace, those buttons go away and they become tabs up here. Sometimes using this as tabs is just easier to use. You can even grab a tab and float the layer panel out like this and put it someplace else if you want to. So it gives you a bit more control as to where the layers are sitting. Let's go back down here and I'll change this back to basic workspace. There we go. Over here next to the trash can, this is where you can delete a layer. Click on this three little dots, brings up a pop-up menu for this, and come down here to panel options. And we have three different thumbnail sizes. Right now I'm using the middle size over here. Let's go to the large size. And down below it says layer contents. Right now I have entire document, which means you're seeing the whole image here. And the nice thing about this one is if your image is smaller than the layer size, you see the whole layer size. I like that because I can then see how it sits on the layer. So I can see the size of this cloud picture here on top of that layer. If you do layer bounds, then it maximizes anything on the layer. That's useful if you have things that are hard to see, real small images, you kind of get magnified over here. But mostly I'll use this as the entire document. This we also have use default masks on fill layers. Always leave that one checked. That's something which we would do in more advanced topics. So we've changed our layer style, choose OK. And the layer style now over here changes these to larger size layers. Something else you can do is actually change the coloration of your layers in here if you need to. If you have a lot of layers, maybe you want to give yourself a bit more organization on those layers, right-click on a layer, and down below here you can change the color. Let's make this one red. It just colorizes that bit here. It doesn't do anything on the layer. It just changes the color of the layer. And you can use this as just a little way of organizing visually your different layers. I'll put these back to no color, which is how I normally work. There we go. You've already seen me show and hide layers just by clicking on this little eye here. There's a cross through it there, a line through it that's hidden. Click it again, and that's shown. So you can show or hide layers. Also, notice these little icons so you can link layers together. I'm going to click right here. I'll hold the Control key down or the Shift key. They both work. And click on one of those things. These layer icons are now gold. These two layers are now locked together. So if I click on the top one here, grab that and pull it, notice how both layers are now linked together as one unit. I'm going to Control Z keyboard shortcut to go back to the beginning here like that. So very useful if you have a lot of layers which should stay together in the same position. To unlink those, just select them, click it again, and they're then unlinked. You can also lock a layer, and that's up here, little lock button. That layer is now locked. I can't do anything with that layer. There you go. Layer is locked. So if I try to move it, layer is locked. If I try to paint on it, can't do it. The layer is locked. So it protects a layer. To unlock, just click on that and it goes away. Or I can lock transparent areas. So I grab the paintbrush. It's on right now. And if I paint over here, notice that I cannot paint on the transparent areas, but I can paint on the image itself. I'll do Control Z to undo that again. So it's just a way of protecting a layer. If you have contents that has a lot of transparency, you want to keep your painting or other effects inside the image itself, use that one. Click on that again just to unlock. While we're right here, it says opacity right above this. Opacity is how solid that layer is. I'm going to change back to the Move tool. You can make this more see-through by changing the opacity. Click on this and you get a little slider control. And notice how I can make that layer see-through. That's the opacity of the layer. And sometimes it's very useful for different effects. Just go back to the top up here. There we go. To the left of that, this little thing that says normal. Click on that and you get all these blend modes. What these do is it blends this layer into the layers behind it in different ways, such as darkening. It's going to just darken the image in behind. Anything that's brighter will stay unchecked. Linear burn does that. There's lots of different effects you can get by using these different blend modes. Ones I use a lot are screen, and overlay works a lot. Overlay is a really good one for just kind of combining two pictures together. I use soft light quite a bit as well. You can also just change the hue, saturation, color. I do a lot of work with blend modes inside my video projects here on YouTube, and I have a whole list on what each one of these things does over in that new Photo Coach program that I showed you just a few minutes ago. So you can get information on all of these inside that Photo Coach. I'll put this back to normal again. There we go. If you want to rename a layer, you can do that. Background copy doesn't really make much sense up here. Right click and choose rename layer right here. Or if you click once and then click a second time, you can get into that layer. Then just rename it. I'll just call it Eagle, hit the enter key. We've now renamed that layer. Again, very useful if you have a lot of layers. You can rename those different things just to help to organize your layers. You can also place layers into layer groups. I'm going to take this sky picture here, drag it above that eagle layer so I have these two sky pictures. So I wanted to have these in one group. Choose my top one, hold the Control key down, choose the second one, and then click on the icon right here. This puts that into a group. You can also rename your group. I'll just double click that. That's my sky group. This is something which came in version 2015 of Photoshop Elements. If you have an earlier version, you won't have this. What this does, it just helps you to organize everything. So all those are inside of that one group up here. And I can show or hide the whole group. I can also apply effects to the whole group as well. So it's a real nice way to just kind of clean things up, organize your space, and work on multiple layers at the same time. And there are several different types of layers. We saw one type at the very beginning with my layers letters with the different patterns inside those. Those are type layers, and you can make that by going over here. Just go over here to the text tool right there, click on that. This brings up your type. You can put in different kinds of type, regular, vertical, outlines, and so forth. I'll just stick with the standard type tool. You can change your color right here. Let's just make this kind of a cyan color, and then click inside your image. I'll set this at centered text. There we go. And it puts in some sample text. If you're in Photoshop Elements 2024, if you're in an earlier version, you'll just get a type insertion point, which will look like this. I'll just backspace over that. Looks like that. Just start typing. I'll type in some text. And this comes in as a type layer right there. If you double click on that, you can then edit that text. I'll come down here. I'll change the size. 72 point, a bit easier to see, or go over the size name. You can then actually drag that and change your text size right there. So pretty easy to come in and make text. That's a text layer. You can also apply styles. You can apply styles to anything. We'll apply it onto this text layer. Go up here to the layer menu. Notice that a lot of what we're doing here is also shown here inside the layer menu. Let's come down to layer style settings. I'll put a drop shadow on this. I'll put the drop shadow over here to the kind of upper left-hand corner. The size is how soft the edge is. The distance is how far away it is. There you go. There's kind of a nice text, a bit of distance in there. The opacity is how dark it is. There's the opacity. There's the distance. And the size is how soft it is or how out of focus. I'll go like that. Choose OK. So that's putting in a layer style. And you can see if a layer has a style on it by that little FX icon right there on the right-hand side of the layer. And if I right-click on the name of this layer, come down here to copy layer style, I can copy that style to a different layer. Let's come down here to our sky layer, right-click on the name again, and paste layer style. There we go. It applies that layer style or copies it to that other layer. We also have adjustment layers, and those allow you to put some basic image adjustments onto a layer. Right now we're on that sky layer. And that's up here again, layer. Come down here to adjustment layer. We have fill layers and adjustment layers. The fill layers put in just a solid color or a gradient or a pattern. It just fills a whole layer with your color or a gradient. Or the adjustment layer actually applies different adjustments. Then you find these same adjustments inside the enhance menu up here, basically in these two sections, color and lighting. But with layers, this is a much better way to do it because we can then change that in the future. If you use the enhance menu and you put that adjustment like a levels adjustment onto something, it's stuck, you're done with it, you can't make any changes. With this, we can actually change it because it comes in as a separate layer. Let me show you that. I'll just do the levels right here, and I'll use the previous layer here. What this does is it links the adjustment to that one layer. If I want to make this darker, put the dark side over it. There we go. The kind of thing that you would do over in the Enhance menu. A little bit of adjustments like that, make it a bit richer looking. Now the nice thing about this style here, let's just make this a bit wider. There we go, you see that better, is that I can show or hide that adjustment. I'm not stuck with it. I can show it or hide it or even delete it if I want to. You can also find the adjustments up here in the button right there, create new fill or adjustment layer. Click on that. You can then choose from those right in here. Here's your fill layers and here's your adjustment layers right there, right above your layers panel. Let's just do a fill layer real fast. Go up here to the text layer. Whenever you click on a layer and do a new layer, it always comes in above the layer that you're currently on. We'll just do a fill layer from here, solid color, choose OK. There it is. The layer comes in above the layer that I was on. This thing over here, this is the layer mask, and this can be used to show or hide the contents of that layer. There's this light blue outline. That means that this side is selected, the mask is selected. If I go over here and double click, I'm now looking at the layer side, and then just cancel that. This side over here, this is the layer mask side. On these adjustment layers, if you double click, it also brings your adjustment back up again, so I can change my adjustment. So if I'm down here on this layer, double click on that levels, I can change the levels. That's why, or one of the main reasons why I like to use adjustment layers with my images. Let's go back up here to our fill layer, and I'll choose black. We have our black color right here. Let's grab the paintbrush, make my brush bigger, real large. And if I paint black onto the layer mask, notice how it shows through and shows what's in behind. So black hides anything on this layer, and you can see what's behind. The white area is showing what's on that layer, and the black is hiding what's on that layer. So black hides and white shows. I can control this, right click. I can disable it or delete it. I can also turn it into a selection. Just click on that, and there's a selection. I use the Control D to deselect that. So go ahead, we'll just hide that layer. Sometimes you may need to simplify a layer. We talked about that previously. We were talking down here at the sky and that little icon right there. This, of course, is a smart object layer. You can also simplify other kinds of layers. For instance, let's say I wanted to simplify this text. I wanted to make it all just one thing. Sometimes you need that. You can right-click on this and simplify layer. It's now a graphic image, and it's no longer text. Right-click, do it again. And now the shadow and everything, all of that is now just an image. It's no longer text. And again, this is useful sometimes for more complex projects. So that's right-click and simplify, which is now grayed out because we've gone as far as we can on that one layer. And when I brought in this adjustment layer, I brought it in as a clipping mask. That's just a kind of bent icon. What that means is this is only being applied to that layer. Now there's another way to use a clipping mask. I'm just going to hide this layer, hide that. I'll show this layer. Let's hide that text. Come down to this layer, and that's to put something inside of another layer. You can use a clipping mask to put something inside of a different layer. I'll put a layer underneath of this layer. Let's go up here to New Layer. I'll put it under that layer. So there's a layer underneath this layer. Let's go over here to the Type tool. I'll just put this at black. It doesn't matter for this, but black is easy. Click into the middle right here. Hide that sky first. There we go. There's our sample text. This is what I did for that first thing you saw when I opened up this project. I just did a layer for each one of the letters in Layer. Choose OK. I'll click on the corner here. Then I can stretch this out and make this letter bigger. There you go. So it's a big letter. Just sitting here. Let's bring our sky back again. Now if I go over here where the name is, right click on the name and then create clipping mask. What this does is it takes this layer and puts whatever's on this layer inside of this layer. And the only thing on this layer below it is just that L. So it basically puts the cloud picture inside of the L. We'll do that right here. There we go. You see how that's kind of put inside there. I can then move this around. You can see that you can see different parts of the sky, but it's inside of that L layer. That's how you put a photo into a layer, by using a clipping mask. We can also apply a style as well. Here we have our layer styles. This one has a FX. I'm going to right click here. Let's copy that layer style. Come down to our L layer, right click. I'll paste that layer style, and it puts that same drop shadow on that. Now, one last thing. Sometimes you need to merge your layers together for special effects work, where you're doing several steps on a major or more complex image. You can do that by clicking on a layer, using the Control-Shift keys to select more layers, and then right-click on the name, and you can merge that down depending upon what kind of layer it is. I can't merge photos into text. I have to simplify the text layer for this to work, but you can do that by merging layers. And again, I'll do that sometimes in projects if it's required. Most of the time, you never need to do that. Now down below, that's this merge here, merge down, merge visible, if they were the same kind of layer. Below that, it says flatten image. I recommend never, ever flattening your image. What that does is it takes everything in your project and puts all of that onto just one layer. Now, you used to have to do that 20 years ago with computers, a long time ago, when you were going to be outputting this to a print or outputting it to a different file type. You'd have to flatten the image first. We haven't had to do that in ages. So don't ever flatten your image. You never need to. What I prefer doing is saving the image as a Photoshop file. And that's the PSD file format that Photoshop Elements uses. That retains everything, so you can always come back and make changes. Then if you want it as a different photo type for using a different project or put it up online or share it, whatever, then just do a Save As for that. Go up here to File, Save As, or Save for Web. Save it as a JPEG, for instance, right here. I have my layer image right there saved. So it saves it out, and it automatically does any flattening that's needed to get it down to that file format. Choose Save. I'll go large file size. Choose OK. That's now saved out. But I still have this file that has all my layers, so I can come back and do more work later on if I want to change the image and save it again. So if you want this information in an easy-to-use step-by-step guide, nice written text, maybe you can just print that out, put it next to your computer as you're working with your layers, as you're learning the program. Take a look at my HTGPhoto coach, and I'll put a link for that in the description right down there. And if you like this video, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already done so you don't miss any videos in the future. And I'll see you next time.